Good evening and welcome to the March 18, 2025 City Council regular hybrid meeting. I'm Mayor Salim Neese. This evening's hybrid City Council meeting is being brought to you in person and by Zoom. We're also broadcasting live on MITV Channel 21 and on the city's YouTube channel. Welcome and thanks for joining us tonight, the few of us that are here. Council members, please have your microphones turned on for roll call. City Clerk Andrea Larson, please call the roll.
Mr. Mayor, we don't have a quorum yet. Oh, now we have a quorum. Councilmember Reynolds just joined.
Councilmember Reynolds just in time. All right, City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Andral. Here. Councilmember Jacobson is absent. Councilmember Reynolds.
Here, barely.
Councilmember Weicker has not joined us yet. Councilmember Weinberg.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum has not joined us yet, and Mayor Neese.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And City Clerk, please note for the record that Councilmember Andral and Councilmember Reynolds have joined us remotely. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're in council chambers, please stand and face the flag. If you're remote, please turn off your video. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we now move to approval of tonight's agenda. If there's no questions, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved by Councilmember Weinberg, seconded by Councilmember Andral. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andral. Aye. Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
And Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion passes. The agenda is approved. Our next item of business is appearances. This is an opportunity for anyone to speak to the City Council on any item, except items requiring a public hearing, any quasi-judicial matters, any campaign-related matters. Tonight's agenda will include in-person public appearances and remote public appearances via Zoom. Individuals wishing to address the council may do so in person or by Zoom or telephone, provided they register with the City Clerk by 4 p.m. today. When it's your turn to speak, you'll be called by name. Remarks must be addressed to the council as a whole and not to individual council or staff members. Any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or who becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the City Council may be requested to leave the meeting. Please speak audibly, state your name and city of residence for the record. There'll be a timer on the screen. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. When your time is ended, I'll thank you for your comments and move to the next speaker or item of business. City Clerk, please call the first speaker.
Our first speaker tonight is John Hamer.
Thank you very much for inviting citizens to speak on this very important topic. My name is John Hamer, and my wife and I have lived on Mercer Island for over 25 years. We have 4 grandchildren, 2 of whom live on the island and attend Northwood School. I am now working with a group of our fellow citizens. We call ourselves Friends of Dragon Park. Some of them are here tonight. The honorary co-chairs of our organization include Lola Deane, who is here with us tonight. She and her husband founded Deane's Children's Park years ago. She now lives at Covenant Shores. As you may know, my grandson Ford, who's here, he's out right outside, has a rare genetic disorder and is in a wheelchair. He can't use any of the current Dragon Park playground equipment, and the pathways and open areas are mostly covered with bark chips, which don't work for wheelchairs. This place is also hazardous for aging seniors like me. We are part of a growing coalition that includes Mercer Island Rotary, Mercer Island Preschool Association, Friendship Circle, and Moms for Safe Mercer Island. Our goal is to help the city renovate Deane's Children's Park to the highest possible standards of accessibility and inclusivity for those of all ages and abilities. A few years ago, when Mercerdale Park had to be closed for renovation, a group of us got together and began an effort to make it fully accessible and inclusive. The city responded very positively, and the renovated playground at Mercerdale is now one of the most popular on the island with soft surfaces, wide paths, nice ramps, playgrounds, equipment that works for all abilities. Our group knew that the city's pros plan calls for the renovation of all our other parks and playgrounds over the next several years, with Dragon Park being high on the list. We decided to stick together as a citizens coalition and help support the city's efforts in this process. We're extremely grateful that the city's Parks and Recreation Department, led by Kelly Hildy, did a special presentation for us in this room on January 27th of this year. They laid out in great detail the Dragon Park renovation plan and listened to our suggestions. We stand ready to help in any way we can as the final design and budget become clear. Our group is a network of citizens with significant expertise in project management. Our supporters list is growing. We're meeting regularly to determine how we can be most helpful. We're ready and willing to partner with you on this very important effort.
Thank you. And if you want to leave your comments for the city clerk, we can enter those in the record. Okay. Is there
Our
a
next speaker is Victor Rashish.
My name is Victor Rashish. I'm a Mercer Island resident and a Mercer Island business owner. I'm here to speak to you today about AB 6603, Town Center Parking Regulations. You should have received an email from me on this topic. I've now watched and rewatched the July 16th meeting where town center parking was last discussed. Our business position on AB 6603 is as follows. We support 2 hours of free street parking in our town center with no opportunity to extend beyond that time. We do not support the requirement for a parking app. We support this for the hours of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., which in practicality works out to be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. If feasible, we also are equally supportive of the proposal for 24/7 enforcement from the July 16th meeting. The position that we support, 2 hours of free parking with no parking app, is consistent with the parking regulations in retail areas for the surrounding communities. I've provided you photos for 2 hours of free parking, free street parking with no parking app areas near retail for Bellevue on Main Street, Kirkland on Central Way and on Lake Street, West Seattle on California Avenue, and the Renton Business District. What's unclear to me is why the council has chosen to go in a different direction from the surrounding communities and from the original proposal by city staff back in July. I'll be watching the council's discussion with interest tonight to hear why we feel that the Mercer Island Town Center is somehow different and warrants a different approach from our surrounding communities. After tonight's discussion, I encourage the city council to direct city staff to reach out to the city staff in these surrounding communities to deeply understand how they are able to make 2 hours of free street parking with no parking app work in their retail core areas. I'd also encourage each of you to visit the retail core areas in the surrounding communities and look for the mythical 4 hours of street parking monitored by a parking app. When you're unsuccessful in finding these areas, which I'm confident you will be, please ask yourself why we are reinventing the wheel for Mercer Island Town Center street parking. Thank you for your consideration, and as always, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
There are no further speakers tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, we'll move to our next item of business, which is approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains AB 6644, the February 25, 2025 payroll certification, AB 6645, the March 10, 2025 payroll certification, AB 6650, certification of claims paid February 1, 2025 through February 15, 2025, City Council regular hybrid meeting minutes of March 4, 2025, AB 6643, deaccession removal of downtown streetscapes, street name inlays, public art installation, AB 6646, interim regulations in MICC 1916-010, related to emergency shelters and housing, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing, second reading of ordinance number 25C05, AB 6647, interim regulations related to unit lot subdivisions, SB 5258, in Title 19 MICC, second reading of ordinance 25C-06, AB 6648 Arch Housing Trust Fund project approvals, AB 6649 2024 countywide planning policy amendments. Council may have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. Second?
Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum, seconded by Councilmember Weinberg. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andral.
Aye.
Councilmember Weiger.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion passes. Our first item of regular business is AB 6603, Town Center Parking Regulations Discussion. We welcome Management Analyst Amelia Jaden and a slew of other folks.
A voice from the back. I'll be kicking it off. Good evening, City Council. I'm City Manager Jesse Vaughn, welcoming a team from both the City Manager's Office and the Police Department to lead us through the presentation. I'll kick us off. Let's go to the next slide, Amelia. City Council, for tonight's discussion, we're going to walk you through the background. It's been a few months since we last talked to you about town center parking. We'll then walk you through the guidance that we're seeking related to on-street parking in town center, the new town center parking area at the former Tully site, and we'll talk about next steps. Mr. Mayor, I didn't have a chance to talk to you about this before the meeting, but I do recommend we allow the staff to run through the slide deck, and then we'll go back to the discussion items if that works for you.
Works for me.
A reminder, just high-level theme here, we need to update our regulations for on-street parking in the town center and establish parking regulations for the new town center parking area, which doesn't have a name yet, but it's the new parking area at the former Tully site, so we've got it generically labeled right now. Your direction is needed on both of those items, the on-street parking in town center and the parking regulations at the former Tully site. We'll walk you through all of the touch points in each of those categories as we go through the presentation. All right, Amelia, I'll turn the floor back to you.
Good evening, Council. Amelia Jaden, Management Analyst. And I will be guiding you through the rest of tonight's presentation, starting with some background and history on parking regulations in Town Center. As a reminder, the Town Center Parking Plan was adopted in November of 2023. In July of 2024, staff returned to Council and received direction to implement an on-street parking system where a motorist would register their vehicle for 2 hours of free parking and have the option to extend their parking up to a 4-hour maximum for a paid fee. In September of 2024, the City Council adopted ordinance number 24C-14, increasing the parking citation fee and sunsetting the Town Center commuter parking permit program. This ordinance went into effect on January 1st, 2025, when the parking citation fee increased from $20 to $54, and the parking spaces previously reserved for the Town Center commuter parking permit program were converted to unrestricted parking. Earlier this year, the City Council awarded the Town Center parking area contract to OMA Construction. The Town Center parking area is located at the former Tully site at the end of East Sunset Highway. Construction at the site began in February of this year, and as of last week, the Tully's building was demolished and removed. Construction for the site is anticipated to be completed by July 2025. For existing parking enforcement, the Police Support Officer, or PSO, is the person that is primarily responsible for enforcement among their other duties of animal control and prison transports. The PSO currently must manually chalk tires to conduct parking enforcement, which involves driving around town center at 2-hour intervals to be able to see if a vehicle has overstayed their parking. This system is inefficient and labor intensive and prevents other officers from assisting in parking enforcement. The Sound Transit Light Rail Station is anticipated to open on the island in late 2025 of this year, or late 2025. Staff anticipate that the park and ride will reach 100% occupancy on weekdays after the light rail station opens. This assumption comes from historical and current data around park and ride occupancy. From 2010 to 2017, the park and ride often reached 100% occupancy on weekdays. Additionally, over the last year, staff have been conducting quarterly park and ride counts. During the February count, the park and ride averaged 82% occupancy at noon. The table on the slide shows the comparison of the November and February park and ride occupancy counts. The table shows a large increase between the counts, likely due to the return to office mandates from major employers like Amazon. With that in mind, managing the on-street parking supply to ensure that parking is available for both commuters leaving Mercer Island and patrons of Mercer Island businesses will be crucial to the success of Town Center. The map that you see on the screen shows the current parking regulations for the the 250 on-street parking spaces in Town Center. The sections highlighted in yellow show where there is an existing 2-hour time limit, and the sections highlighted in green show where parking is currently unrestricted. Many of these parking spaces became unrestricted in January of this year when the Town Center commuter parking permit program ended. As a reminder, Council, staff were directed to implement an on-street parking system where a motorist would register their vehicle for 2 hours of free parking and have the option to extend their parking up to a 4-hour maximum for a paid fee. These parking regulations would be in effect from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Under this system, staff recommend using an hourly rate of $2.50 per hour, as this rate is regionally comparable. The table that is shown on screen shows the parking rates for 2 Mercer Island garages and 4 Washington cities. To note, the parking rate and the provision of free parking would be established in the fee schedule and subject to annual review by the City Council. A parking payment and registration system would require the use of a mobile application, effectively changing how parking enforcement would be conducted. The mobile application would integrate with data from the ALPR system and our existing enforcement software to create a one-touch enforcement system, meaning that an officer would be able to drive around Town Center and receive notifications when a vehicle has not registered to park or has overstayed their parking. Implementation of an app-based system would greatly increase efficiency and allow other officers to more regularly participate in enforcement. As City Manager Bond mentioned earlier, we will run through these decisions later, but staff are seeking confirmation of the approach to implement a 2 hours free, 4-hour max parking system with a proposed rate of $2.50 per hour for the on-street parking. This brings us to the new Town Center parking area at the former Tully site. The parking area will provide 33 parking spaces as well as 2 accessible parking spaces. Parking regulations need to be established for this site. Staff recommend that the city provide motorists with 2 hours of free parking and have the option to extend this parking up to 12 hours for a paid fee. Like the on-street parking, these regulations would be in effect from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Staff recommend that the city charge $2.50 per hour, but also implement a maximum daily rate at the new parking area of $12.50. Under the system, this would mean that a person who registers their vehicle for 0 to 2 hours of parking would receive free parking. A person who registers their vehicle for 2 to 7 hours of parking would receive the first 2 hours for free and then pay $2.50 for each additional hour. For example, someone who registers for 5 hours of parking would receive 2 hours of free parking and then pay for 3 hours of parking, meaning their total would be $7.50. For any parking over 8 hours, the user would receive the first 2 hours of free parking and then pay the daily maximum rate of $12.50. This model provides flexibility for people who need to be in Town Center for longer than 4 hours, increasing the capacity of the Town Center parking supply. This model also supports the park and ride overflow should it reach 100% occupancy and incentivizes the use of public transportation as it provides a less expensive alternative to garage parking in either downtown Seattle or downtown Bellevue. Staff are seeking confirmation of the approach to implement a 2 hours free, 12 hours max, charging $2.50 per hour up to the daily maximum rate of $12.50. I will now walk you through what implementation of this parking program could look like. Staff anticipate needing at least 4 months to implement and launch an on-street parking system and parking regulations at the new town center parking area. Based on the direction provided tonight, staff will return with an adjusted implementation timeline at the next council touchpoint. The next council touchpoint would be staff returning with an ordinance that establishes the framework for paid parking and a resolution that amends the fee schedule. Both the provision of free parking and the rates for on-street parking and at the town center parking area would be established in the fee schedule and subject to annual review as part of the fee schedule adoption process. Staff will continuously evaluate parking usage data and present their findings to City Council, ensuring that the city will be equipped to adjust the parking system as needed in response to changes in demand. Implementing the parking payment and registration system will require the use of a mobile application. Staff recommend using Park Mobile for its mobile application. Park Mobile has a large presence in King County through Diamond Parking. On Mercer Island, the Island Square Garage uses the Park Mobile app for parking registration. Notably, Park Mobile will not charge a transaction fee for free parking under 2 hours. For paid parking, the user would be charged a 45-cent per transaction fee. The city will need to replace most of the parking signage in town center, as the existing signage will need to be updated to reflect the new regulations. Additional signage providing directions on how to register a vehicle using Park Mobile will be installed in the right-of-way by city crews as part of the signage update. Staff will implement a comprehensive outreach campaign over the 4-month implementation timeline. The campaign will first focus on educating Mercer Island residents on upcoming changes, and then shift to how to use the app and providing technology support. This campaign would include updates on Let's Talk, outreach to the business community in the Chamber of Commerce, outreach at community events like Summer Celebration, social media posts, and communications in the MI Weekly. As mentioned previously, the new parking system would greatly increase the efficiency of parking enforcement by creating a one-touch system and allowing more officers to consistently participate in enforcement. Once implemented, it would be under the discretion of the police department to issue warnings before citations for violations of the new parking regulations. Finally, staff recommend that the revenue generated from the parking program first be directed to supporting parking enforcement and parking signage. Additional support for parking enforcement could include equipping more patrol vehicles with the city's existing enforcement software and more ALPR cameras. Revenue that exceeds the cost of enforcement and signage would remain in the city's general fund for use and appropriation at the direction of the City Council. Now, Council, we are looking for direction first for the on-street parking.
No, go ahead.
The first thing we are looking for direction on is the approach to implement a system where a user would register their vehicle for 2 hours of free parking and have the option to extend their parking up to 4 hours for a paid fee.
Okay, if we could stop the screen share, I'll see who I've got left out there. All right, so I've got some hands up. We'll go to questions, so we'll start with you, Councilmember Anderell.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the presentation. And so to clarify, if someone parked their car at 8 p.m. on the street under the staff proposal, they could be there until 8 a.m. the next day. The 2 hours of free parking would then kick in, and they could then pay to be there until noon. Am I getting that right?
Yes, they would have to register for the free 2 hours, but they could register for the free 2 hours and pay for the additional 2 hours. Until
Okay. And could they register for 2 hours at 6 o'clock at night? And then after 8 o'clock, they're good to go? And then they get another free 2 hours on the other end of that, and then they get 2 paid hours, so they're basically there from 6 o'clock at night until noon for $5?
Yes, that scenario is accurate. And Councilmember Anderell, I just want to correct something. The 2 hours free followed by paid parking and the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. was not the staff proposal. That was the direction that council provided to us in July. So we're coming back to affirm that and then also discuss the rates. If the council wishes to pursue something different, this is, your policy direction.
Okay. Well, and I don't remember where I was in July, and I don't honestly recall majority of council giving direction for two paid and two free, two free and two paid and 8 to 8, but if we did, we did. I didn't rewatch the tape. But under the scenario I just laid out, I would have to say, if we think about what our goals are here and my goal is to support businesses by giving residents and customers from off-island accessible parking to patronize these businesses, this does not do that. So I would just kind of put my stake in the ground right now for 2 hours free and no more. Whether we use an app for that or not, I don't know. We could always, if you decide to go, if council decides to go with an app, then you can always implement a paid option down the road if that seems to be making sense. But I can't support this proposal.
Quick question for you, what are the hours on your proposal? 8 to 8?
Mine?
Yeah.
I would say 8 to 10.
Okay. All right, we'll move to Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
A few questions, but City Manager Bond, can you, I'm just looking through the AB here from the, somewhere in the fall, but can you, what was the original staff recommendation on the hours?
Amelia, do you recall?
I do not recall, unfortunately.
If I remember correctly, we had, hi, Robbie Cunningham-Adams, Senior Management Analyst. From what I remember in July, we had sort of offered that 8 to 8, Monday to Saturday was a good place to start discussion, and that's where we ended at that time. And that timing and days per week is consistent with other communities, but staff are open to different variations of it.
I think it's important to remember, as we rewind the clock on the town center parking plan that we adopted, the on-street parking, the priorities in that plan directed on-street parking to be used to support our businesses. So patrons and customers, you do have businesses that are open late into the evening, primarily restaurants, 9 o'clock, I think off the top of my head, maybe the latest, possibly 10. So that's something to keep in mind for that evening hour.
Okay, come back to me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Reynolds,
Yes, are you taking comments now too, or just questions at this point?
as you like.
Okay, I have a couple of quick comments. One is that I'm uncomfortable, if I think about the problem we're trying to solve, the problem I'm trying to solve anyway, is no overnight parkers blocking out businesses. And a solution which allows people to effectively park at 6 p.m. when they get home from work and stay all night doesn't seem very satisfactory to me. So I would rather see the 8 to 8 enforcement switch to be 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. That's my first observation. The second one I would have is that I do like the idea of allowing people to pay for the additional 2 hours. 2 hours is plenty for people shopping in town center, but we have to remember that a lot of people live in town center as well. And if I go over to somebody's condo for dinner, I'd like to be able to linger for a while and pay for a little extra time, or for lunch on a Saturday where the evening thing doesn't rescue me. So I think allowing people to pay for 2 extra hours is a good thing.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum?
I guess a question for the chief or the commander here. For the cities that don't have some sort of parking app or some sort of, ALPR system, how are they enforcing 2-hour parking? Are they still doing chalks and folks walking around? Is it the honor system? How is that done?
Commander Seifert, do you want to, or Chief Sutter, do you want to provide the information we have, for example, from the city of Bellevue?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and then I'll also ask Commander Seifert to also provide his perspective. He just got off the phone with the city of Bellevue. My understanding from my experience is if you don't have ALPR technology, then you're back to the old school method of chalking a tire and somehow documenting when that enforcement officer, whether it's a civilian enforcement officer or a police officer, actually chalked the tire. And so, and then you have to come back after that 2-hour period has gone by, and then re-verify that the vehicle hasn't moved by looking, at the chalk marks where you had made earlier. So it's at least 2 touches to go back to the old school way before the technology. And then I'll punt over to Commander Seifert for updates as to what Bellevue is doing.
Good evening, Mike Seibert, Operations Commander with the Police Department. Yeah, talking to Bellevue, it sounds like the only place they're able to pretty effectively enforce the time restrictions is where they're using diamond parking, which is their downtown corridor. Their officers don't chalk. They don't want to go in doing that for various reasons that have occurred from case law over the years. But without an ALPR system, which their parking officers currently do not have, the only way they're doing time enforcement is with with an outside company that they're contracting with.
So it sounds like I'm pretty safe if I stay over that 2-hour maximum in certain places in Bellevue. Well, you don't have to answer that. Okay. I have some comments, but I'm happy to refer other folks with questions.
Okay. Councilmember Weinberg.
Hi. So it seems like we're optimizing our street spacing or street spaces for one group of people, which are shoppers, and we've also got employees of Mercer Island businesses. We've got commuters, and we've got visitors to, like, as Councilmember Reynolds was mentioning, visitors to residents in town center. And I think we want to be careful not to try and create a one-size-fits-all without excluding one of these groups. Like, for example, we want to make sure that employees can park someplace that is relatively close to their business without having to leave their job and go move their car every 2 hours. There are some places where there's off-street parking that can solve that, and there's some places where it can't. So we need to be a little more sensitive to that, I think. And it's a little bit harder to know how long visitors want to stay. The employees, usually we kind of know they're going to be coming at the beginning of the commuter hour and then leaving in the evening commuter hour. But I think that we need to have a little more nuanced solution than just 2 hours or just a 2+2 solution across the entire town center.
But no recommendation on how to do that or where to do that?
Well, I think that we could take a look at where the people, where employees need to park. And one guide for that might be, where did we have permit parking before? Because that might be locations that were being used by employees. That might be a place to have, say, 8-hour parking instead of 2-hour parking. But to have 2-hour parking where you want to have the customers that get out and walk into the store, buy something and leave within 2 hours, and then have things that allow for 8-hour parking that is a little further away, maybe a block or so away from the stores, but that allows the employees to drive onto the island and park and get to their job without having to go out and move their car every 2 hours.
Got it. Councilmember Weicker.
So I'll just say that I like the 2 hours free and the 4-hour max with the $250 paying for that second set of parking hours. I like the Tully site for the 12-hour cap to support that commuter parking. I think that $12.50 max per day is reasonable. And then I just have a question about how this Park mobile app helps support our police enforcement. Could someone clarify a little more? Like, having that app helps because we need fewer police officers doing the chalk thing, which sounds inefficient. So that the mobile app helps us identify who's paid, who hasn't, and who to give a parking citation to. Like, help me understand how those two interplay together again.
Sure. Commander Seifert, do you want to talk about the operations?
So the way the app would help us as opposed to what we're doing currently, like you said, we have the 2 points of contact right now where the PSO or patrol officer needs to identify vehicles that are parked, mark them in some way, take notes of how they've been marked, and then come back in a period 2 hours later and confirm that that vehicle hasn't moved. With the ALPR system that we currently have, There's some limitations that are difficult to work with where we're finding it's easier to just do the old-fashioned chalking or putting rocks and sticks on tires, which is pretty easy to overcome, as opposed to having an app which would give you a single point of contact. So the app would tell the officer through the ALPR system that this vehicle at this one point in time is either properly parked or is not properly parked, based on when the person parked there, based on how they registered, based on if they paid for the extra hours. So a patrol officer or the PSO driving through the central business district can just get notifications on their vehicle. This vehicle's good, this vehicle's good, this vehicle's not. Write a ticket and it's done. As opposed to having that second point of contact, which is difficult for our PSO and very difficult for our patrol officers to be able to do on a consistent basis.
Got it.
Thank you.
Nice.
So I'm in favor of that app then, because it helps with our efficiency and the revenue to help support the PSO. Sounds like a useful mechanism. So yeah, fully support that, and I'm used to using that all over town anyway.
All right, Wendy, while you're offering opinions, what are you on the hours? Are you an 8 to 10 person, 8 to 8 person?
I'm an 8 to 8. Our town center shuts down by 9. So, let people go visit their friends and have dinner and stay and get up in the morning and leave before 8. If they stay a little longer, they can pay for it.
Okay, City Manager Bond, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to go back to the conversation of trying to meet all needs here through our on-street parking. Council, I want to remind you, we're talking about 250 parking spaces. We have a town center parking plan that prioritizes those spaces to support our businesses. I have to imagine, I don't know the hard and fast number, but we sunsetted the permit parking program with intention to free up those spaces to promote turnover and to support businesses. I know the chamber and some of the businesses that we're having employees park there are upset with this change, but I am concerned that you have a planning document, you established a policy and that's the direction that we've been working. We're happy to work with the businesses. I think they need to also get creative. They need to use the park and ride. They need to talk about using transit. Perhaps also working with the city on first last mile solutions. But I just want to be clear that the staff are not presenting this to meet all needs. That's impossible, and that was not the direction of your town center parking plan. We propose this to support turnover of those parking spaces to support our town center businesses.
We'll move to Councilmember Enroll.
Okay, well, Jesse, thanks for your comments, bringing us back to the goals. I think that even an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. kind of barely hits those goals, because I'm still thinking somebody can, if it's 8 to 8, look, you can park there at 4 in the afternoon, free until 6, pay until 8, go free until 8 a.m., get another free 2 hours until 10. I mean, that space is barely open for 6 hours. I don't think that furthers the goals. So I think that's a little, and I don't know how many people are going to, try to, finesse it that way, but certainly it didn't take me more than 5 seconds to think about it. The only other observation that I would make is, besides that I think we should hew to the goals of opening these parking spaces up, is that I have equity concerns about requiring an app. I know that my mother, rest her soul, not here with us anymore, but not too long ago was driving and did not have a smartphone. She would have been more than capable of driving into downtown Mercer Island and parking, but she would have been completely at sea about how to register her car. And while I'm sure that population is ever shrinking, as more and more seniors get familiar with technology or age into being seniors and are already familiar with technology, but there's still a population out there. And I'm wondering, how does staff want to address that? Is it just, are we just going to look the other way and say it's not an issue, or what are we going to do?
I don't think we're looking the other way on anything. We're here tonight receiving your comments. So respectfully, we would be planning to roll out a marketing campaign to make sure that there's familiarity with using the apps. We have things like the Senior Resource Fair where we can assist people in getting the app installed on their phone. The technology that we're proposing to use, which, by the way, drives an incredible amount of efficiency for operations and enforcement, also allows for somebody to dial in and pay by phone or use an internet browser to pay their fee if they don't have a smartphone. While some cities are not using an app, like Bellevue, we do know the city of Bellevue is evaluating making that move. We know many other cities, like driving to Seattle, you have to have an app. I believe Kirkland is using some relatively similar technology. So we'd be happy to work with, with the community. I think you're right, Councilmember Anderl. The number of folks that don't have a smartphone right now is declining, but that doesn't mean that number is zero. On the other hand, I have to put forth a recommendation that drives operational efficiency for us. We simply cannot staff up to meet the expectations of parking enforcement that we've heard from our businesses. They want more enforcement, and I don't have the resources to add more officers. So this is one of the ways we can improve enforcement in this area.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to what Jesse said before about trying to make sure we're keeping the goals here. Probably get some angry or upset emails from what I'm about to say, but I think, if you're, for businesses or for, larger apartment buildings, these are things that have to be considered, as they're making their plans. Obviously, everyone would love to have an abundance of free spaces for their residents and contractors and other things. But the reality is what we had decided and what had been the goal of our parking plan had been to support the businesses in town center, meaning our, more retail focused businesses. So I understand people are concerned about that, but I think it's important that we keep kind of our eye on the ball there. And there's no way to do that, if we're going to say, we have a limit number of spaces here, right? We can't just say, oh, well, we'll kind of carve these out for this building, for this employer. By the end of the day, that pie gets small, and there's just not going to be enough left in any meaningful way. My question is for the police team here. As it comes to ALPRs, what is the technology for automated ticketing? In terms of, I think obviously of speed cameras where they capture your license plate and get a friendly ticket in the mail. Is that an option down the road for LPRs, or is it still someone has to physically get out of the car and place a ticket on a windshield?
Yeah, the current systems that integrate with the ALPR and then the system that actually produces the ticket, you still need to get out and place it on the windshield. And I think, especially on Mercer Island, having that extra level of an officer being involved is probably a good thing. Getting to a system where there's just tickets being mailed, I think maybe that's a significant step beyond where we are now. Whereas at least having that officer verify that the violation occurred, confirming the vehicle is the vehicle that is on the ticket. There's just some extra steps that when you have the officer involved that I think our community would appreciate.
Okay.
Councilman Reynolds.
Yes, quick question. What is the cost, if any, of getting the app set up and integrating with the LPR? Do we have extra license fees, extra manpower fees, consultants to set it up, et cetera?
There may be a one-time integration fee for some of our enforcement software. Otherwise, Park Mobile covers the first round of parking or signage installation, and we may need one fee for a new merchant account, but the initial rollout is not very expensive, under $2,000, more or less.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, I have one other quick question, if I may.
You may.
Okay. How practical would it be, City Manager, to set up a process where senior citizens, who I think are probably the dominant group that may not have smartphones, to register and sign a form at City Council and say, I don't have a smartphone, here's my license plate, and just have that be cross-checked before a ticket was issued?
We don't have the ability to customize specialization within these apps. So I'm going to really strongly discourage you from pursuing policies that carve out specialty groups.
Okay?
And
I
keep
think
in mind,
just having-
license plates are changing. It may not be the same car you're driving. I mean, it just becomes absolutely unwieldy.
Yeah, I recognize it's less than ideal, and it won't solve all the problems, but I'm trying to strive to find one solution that addresses some of the problem. But, okay,
Yeah. I will tell you that whatever the final direction is of the council, if we move to an app and these parking regulations we're discussing tonight, there will be a phased-in approach where the police department is issuing warnings, and we're, helping people, adapt to the new regulations before we're issuing citations. So we contemplate heavy marketing, and also, a 30 to 60-day period where we're doing education as opposed to enforcement.
Okay, Councilmember Weinberg.
So I agree with Councilmember Androl that I do not like the idea of requiring that people register with an app to park in town center. Parking needs to be a pleasant experience. When I'm shopping, I want to be thinking as I get out of my car about the food I'm about to eat, or the grocery I'm about to buy, or the book I'm about to buy, or the haircut I'm about to get. I don't want to be thinking about, oh, do I have the app for this garage? Oh, where's the sign? And oh, I don't have enough bars. Oh, wait, I don't have enough charge on my phone. Or wait, I don't have a phone. And I agree that there's that if we do require every driver to have an app, that we are effectively discriminating not only about against the elderly, but also the poor and those whose first language is something other than what is printed in this fine print on the signs. So I think we need to find some way to a solution that allows us to collect the money that is needed for paid parking without requiring an app. There are touch-free solutions. You don't have to have an app to park in Seattle. There are some places in Seattle that I've parked, including today, that I didn't have to have an app to park. So I think there are solutions that we can use out there that doesn't exclude people.
Okay, but just to correct the record, you can dial a phone number and start a parking session, is that right, Amelia?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so you don't need an app, you don't need a smartphone,
You need a phone, though.
you don't need a smartphone, okay? All right, that's just to correct the record. Councilmember Weicker.
So we're talking about on-street parking. Amelia, could you remind us how much off-street parking there is? Because when I think about ladies going to lunch and grabbing coffee, or families getting together at Starbucks after a soccer game, like, we have plenty of off-street parking for those destinations as well. Do you happen to recall, isn't it like 3 times as much as this for in the Hadley building, in the Starbucks parking lot? Like, we're just solving for these 250 spots in the core downtown. So I want to really focus on where we're trying to be efficient and effective here, and really get back to our goal of supporting our businesses by having that parking rotate during the days and times and hours that they're open. So again, I'm going to support the parking study, what we talked about last summer, 2 hours free, $2.50 for every hour, up to 4 hours on those streets, including half of which looks free right now because we got rid of the permit parking. And then this new lot we're building to support our commuter parking. It's a really cool project. I'm glad we're getting it done in 12 hours for $12.50 seems like a bargain to me for folks that are going to overflow from the parking ride. So fully supportive of the app to be efficient. Everywhere you go, you have to use an app. If you can't use an app, do off-street parking, or find a street further away and walk a little further, or use the phone that's not a smartphone to do what we have to do in the core area to keep our small businesses supported. So back to my original question, don't we have a lot of off-street parking?
Yes, in the town center parking plan, it says that we have 2,492 off-street parking spaces, but that does include the park and ride, so around 2,000 off-street parking spaces.
2,000 spots for everyone that wants to go to the restaurants and the coffee shops and the retail establishments. So we're talking about 250 here. That's all.
Wendy, what time are we going to lose you? I know you have an obligation tonight.
I can stay for this at least, but 6:30, 6:45?
Okay. Councilmember Androl.
Just to clarify, that total off-street parking, does that include the off-street parking that used to be where the Sing-Wide is? And does it include Riot Games?
Yes,
That it's not available to the public?
Yes, I believe so.
So those are all those spaces. We don't know how many spaces are really available to the public.
The last time we did a count, it was 250. I'd be happy to get back to you with the updated count. It's very close to that.
No, available to the public off-street,
Oh, off-street, I'm sorry.
yeah. Because it sounds like there's stuff in there that is included in the off-street count that has either gone away or is no longer available to the public. So,
Okay.
We haven't updated the count since the parking plan was done.
Councilmember Weicker, is that an old hand, new hand?
Oh, sorry, old hand.
All right. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Yeah, just your question about operational efficiencies before, if we don't have an app, do you have an idea what additional costs that would take to sort of try to have some enforcement around this if we don't? Is there any way to rationalize some of these costs?
Rationalize these costs, I think it depends on what level of enforcement you'd like. Council, full disclosure, right now you have one support officer that splits her time between a couple different duties. Parking enforcement in town center is one of them. She also is one of our primary transports when we have folks in custody needing to go somewhere. So let's call it a half-time parking enforcement officer, maybe even a third of her time some weeks. So we're not dedicating a full-time position to parking enforcement right now. Our parking enforcement process is highly manual, so you can imagine the effectiveness of a half-time employee doing parking enforcement manually, where we're having to do at least 2 touches before we can issue a citation if somebody is parked over time or improperly. Very inefficient. So Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum, I don't have a direct answer to your question, except that if the expectation is that we will implement 2-hour parking without an app, without that tool, that at least helps us define the first touch. I think it's going to be a question back to the council of what level of enforcement are you expecting? It also depends on the hours we set for parking enforcement.
Yeah, and I think this comes back to what we were talking about earlier, that if our goals here are to turn over these spaces and, create that sort of turnover to support businesses, we sort of have to think about the whole equation here. And I understand people not liking the app. Those 20 seconds it take to enter your license plate can be, hard, or installing it, I think we do have to have a plan to kind of get people up to speed on that. But I think if we're serious about having this turnover and having these spaces available to support our businesses in the community, this isn't there's no golden path here. There's going to be something that not everyone loves. And if we're going to change what our direction was from why we wanted to have this parking plan in the beginning, then that's a different conversation. I think we should stick to where we were headed on this, and I sort of understand the concerns, but there is no free way to do this. And when I say this, I mean the enforcement, because you don't have enforcement, you don't really have any. You don't have a program. I understand we could install parking meters or parking kiosks, and my understanding those are tens and tens of thousands of dollars. Okay, so now we're eating into it even more. I understand these concerns, but I also think this isn't a situation where we're A/B testing to see what the outcome is. We are currently in A. We understand what the outcome of that is. I think we should try B and sort of see how that goes. And if there's serious challenges, we can go back. I think that's something that we need to have a little flexibility here.
So just to clarify, that was your 2-hour free
2 hours free.
and no paid?
No paid, and 8 to 10. And I'm pro app.
Okay, so Councilmember Weicker, I would just make an appeal to you, to the sensibility of what Councilmember Anderl kind of outlaid with the hours. The +2 is creating a situation that gets us largely back to where we are, the status quo. If you live in an apartment in town center and you have the prospect of paying $2 or $3 or more $100 a month to park your car in a parking garage, and there is a space to put your car that might require a little bit of trauma with an app, we would be creating that opportunity by doing the +2. The 8 to 10 p.m. partially solves it, but as Councilmember Anderall did the math, you still could have somebody occupying a space at 6 p.m. costing themselves $5 a day, 6 days a week. They probably wouldn't do it 6 days a week. They'd do it 5 days a week. It's still gonna.
Happy to get to 8 to 10, Salim, you're good.
So, the real appeal, and I appreciate that concession, which I like, is the 2 hours only, right? We're looking, if I could get you to 2 hours only, I think that this creates a pilot, at least a project in Town Center that starts off with the direct goal of trying to make 10% of the spaces, right? The 200 spaces that are not the 2,000 on private property available for people proximate to retail.
So 2 hours free and 2 hours paid, 4 hours max, or
2
no
hours,
paid?
2 hours free, we pick up the cost of the transaction, nothing beyond the 2, 8 to 10. That would, if we could get you to that proposal, I think that would be the outcome that is best for the town center. It could always be tweaked later. And Tully's, you've got an option to park all day. They
All
park
day
and
long.
ride.
You can park in the neighborhood and walk a little ways too. So I'll just say 2 hours is sort of tight if you want to work out, have lunch, and hit the bookstore. But I'm happy to compromise to land on having an app, having some parking, having some support for our police officers to not have to go chalk tires anymore. So,
Awesome. So
yes.
I see some more hands. I'm gonna keep going around till they're gone. So Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum. Old hand, Councilmember Reynolds.
I just wanted to clarify, I think it was Councilmember Andrew first proposed this, and I want to make sure I understand. I think she was suggesting to change the morning time from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And, or were we just talking about changing the evening time from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m.? Is that, okay, if that's what we're suggesting, I'm on board with that. I didn't see the rationale of extending the time in the morning. I thought that's what you were saying, Mr. Mayor, but maybe I misunderstood.
We're, just for clarity, Councilmember Andrew, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Is the enforcement period. So you do get to park it there at 10 o'clock at night, and you better get out by 8 in the morning. Although I guess maybe you get your 2 hours free, and so it's still not ideal. But yeah, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. enforcement.
Okay, I was thinking backwards. I thought we were talking about the no enforcement time, but the 10 p.m. enforcement means effectively you can park starting at 8 p.m., right?
Correct.
Okay, City Manager Bond.
Yeah, Mayor Neese, I think you already said this, but I just want to make sure the council understands that 2 hours parking minimum with no fee means we are picking up the tab on the cost of implementing the app. And I do not have a cost estimate for that scenario because you hadn't directed us to look at that, but I'd like to come back and tell you what I anticipate that's going to cost.
Yeah, and so, council, for just a timeline on this, April 1st, we would come back with a first reading. April 15th, we would come back for a second reading based on what we do here tonight. So at first reading, when this returns, City Manager Bond could have that, presumably, could have that cost estimate back to us. So to you, Councilmember Andrew.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, that's a good point, and I think then it would be important to know if we can project approximately how many citations we would end up issuing on a given day or in a given month, and that revenue at $54 a pop could be directed to offset that cost. Or if we're paying for the app and we're not giving any tickets because everybody's complying, well, that's kind of great too, because it's working.
Okay, so with that, before we lose anybody, Amelia, keep me honest here, but I'm going to look, council, for a thumbs up for using an app. The hours of enforcement would be from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., 6 days a week in Town Center. And the maximum would be for the 2 hours, and it would be free. Am I missing anything, Amelia?
I do not believe so.
Okay, so for that proposal, I'm looking for a thumbs up. And City Clerk, I'll ask for you to take note of that.
I see
3-3.
three, yeah, I only see 3 thumbs up, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Weicker, is there any horse trading I can do to get you to that
I want to
position?
know, so no paid parking at all? We're going to have an app just to help provide free parking, that subsidy?
This is really how you support the police department through the enforcement, is the use of that.
Well, and there would
Right.
still be paid parking in the Tully's site.
Yeah, we haven't got to Tully's yet, so you're still going to have that 12 hours.
All right, so I'll support it to get Jesse's cost estimate, but if it costs too much, then we're back to square one on April 1st.
Okay.
So fine, yep.
So with that, council, are there any questions around the Tully's site?
I don't have a question, but I think there was one that was answered in the matrix that I think is important to note. You know, at one point, we had talked about trying to do that for, you know, have that for resident parking only. But there was, I think it was Councilmember Reynolds who posed a question about that today. I think it'd be worthwhile to give the staff just a minute to explain why we've moved away from that proposal.
Sure. Your voice sounds like mine, Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Hey, you trade places with me, please.
Yeah. There were, several years ago, the location of the former Tully's was being evaluated for a multi-use development that would have included approximately 80 to 100 parking stalls underground. The city moved away from that project, but as it was conceived, those parking spaces were intended to be studied, to be allowed for Mercer Island users only. Mercer Island residents only, excuse me. Where we are today is a 33-stall parking area in the town center. Council, the apps that are available to us don't have, we don't have a platform or a way to screen for Mercer Island parkers only. It would take us right back to a permit parking program, which we just sunsetted. And for only 33 parking spaces, that doesn't seem like the right use of that space. I don't see an equitable way to issue parking permits, to be honest. And I'm not interested, to be frank, in going back to a manual process, anything that's manual to regulate parking. So we're proposing right now, this is the first time we've talked with you about it, a version similar to Town Center, 2 hours free, with a little bit longer limitations if somebody is parking there and they need to commute. But council, we're open to the policy discussion. Perhaps you'd like to go in a different direction.
Okay, so council, is there anybody that wants to go in a different direction than what was kind of outlined there for Tully's?
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Weinberg.
So I think charging $12.50 a day is too high. Commuters will sooner park in the park and ride across North Mercer Way and walk across the street in the rain than pay $12 a day. My recommendation is that we model the town center parking area after the permit parking that Sound Transit briefly offered in the park and ride pre-COVID. That is, have some or all of the spaces require permits on weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. With no weeknight or overnight parking, so that after 9 a.m. Unoccupied spaces are open to everyone. And the cost of the permit should be minimal, just enough to cover the issuing of the permits. If the permit is tied to a license plate, then the ALPR technology should be able to tell that's a car that has a permit to be able to park in that space. And it's not really all that much manual work that would be involved in that. I think that making it available for Mercer Islanders is something that a lot of Mercer Islanders would like, if there's an equitable way that we can do it. I hear you when you say it would be hard to do that in an equitable fashion, so if we can explore different options there to show the public that we've considered the different options, if we end up not doing that. I think that I think it can be made very efficient if we have the license plates recorded and leverage the ALPRs to look at that. And if we price it right, frankly, these spaces will be very popular with commuters because one can get to and from the light rail station once it opens without crossing a street. And also once we get the high-speed chargers installed in some of the spaces, I realize that's not part of the initial project, but we're putting in some of the plumbing for that. Those spaces would be the only high-speed charging public chargers on the island at that time until we fully implement the island-wide EV charging plans. So we might want to actually have those spaces not be permit spaces so that it would be open for people to come and charge. You only need that space for about 2 hours to charge.
Okay, very good. Council, any other questions, any other discussion? So the staff proposal was a 6-day-a-week proposal on that. I would ask council to consider a 7-day-a-week proposal, just so that those spaces are available for people that are willing to pay for access to that on Sundays when there's sporting events. Councilmember Reynolds.
Yeah, I would just like to get I found Councilmember Weinberg's proposal interesting to adopt the Sound Transit carpool program or permit process they had. Just like to get the city manager's opinion on practicality of that.
We can administer a permit parking program. I don't know how, are we going to draw names out of a hat and 40 special people on Mercer Island will get a permit? I mean, we're talking about 33 parking spots. That's what I'm struggling with. I don't see that there's an equitable way to give exclusive use to, I suppose it would be a randomly selected group of individual commuters. That's why we didn't recommend permit parking. If I had 100 spots, I might feel differently about it, but it's such a small parking area. It just doesn't, I think there will be a lot of unhappy people that won't be able to access those spaces. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, what I'm wondering, and we don't know, of course, is that if you charge anything for the permit, only some people are gonna want it, because a lot of them will just roll their dice and say, I can go to the parking ride. So maybe there's not as much demand as you fear, but I don't know.
I don't know, there's 26,000 people here. I mean, it's 33 spots. I think you can drum up some demand. Councilmember Anderall. You're on mute.
Yes, I know. I just want to weigh in, Mayor, in support of the 7-day-a-week. I don't think street parking feels different to me, but this kind of parking, it seems like demand might be as high or higher on a Sunday, as you observed with people taking transit into sporting events. So I don't see a reason to exclude Sunday from that.
Okay. Councilmember Weicker, you,
I agree with your 7 days a week. Thank you.
okay. So, Amelia, can you remind me the hours you were proposing on?
8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay, so is there a thought of just being consistent, 8 to 10 on the tele site?
Mr. Mayor, we would absolutely welcome consistency of the hours.
Okay. Councilmember Reynolds.
Just a quick question for you, Mr. Mayor. What's the rationale on going to the 7 days? Because it strikes me, Saturday and Sunday, the parking ride never fills out.
Yeah,
So-
I'm glad you asked. So that gives a lot of opportunity for somebody that doesn't want to pay to go to the parking ride. But what we see with that lot in particular, as it has functioned for, a couple years, it turns into a parking lot for the adjacent building. And should not be the highest and best use of the public parking. It will just literally be full of cars that don't go to a garage and they instead go there.
Okay, I'll buy that.
All right. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
And I think on this equity question, it is sort of hard. I mean, for those of us who have students who have kids in elementary school, the cutoff at 9 o'clock, if your spot disappears, means you're in trouble because those doors don't open till 9. And unless you're going 90 down Island Crest Way, you're going to have trouble. I think it's going to be really hard to create a program here that is not hard to administer and creates enough revenue to justify the administration costs versus, sort of a first come, first served situation, but I'm open to other opinions.
Okay, Councilmember Anderell.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to observe, that we have gotten some entreaties from the 7,800 folks adjacent to the Tully's lot about a longer-term option. Now, Sunday, this will give their service workers and their guests a longer-term option, which I think is good if that's what we want to do. But in the Sunday, I don't think is really particularly punitive because there's the option of free parking on the street on Sunday, and in the parking ride.
That's
So-
right, which presumably will be much more available because of the whole enforcement program.
Yeah, but I don't mind charging, like I said, 7 days a week because that's kind of premium real estate and,
Okay,
Yeah.
so in the interest of letting Councilmember Weicker move to her next obligation, Council, can we get a thumbs up for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 day a week, and then staff proposal, basically on the per hours. Can we get a thumbs up on that? And City Clerk, I'll ask you to.
I see 5 thumbs, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So then, Amelia, I would turn to you to see, have we left anything on the table that needs to be addressed?
The only thing that I would like to confirm is the rate of $2.50 per hour and the maximum daily rate of $12.50.
Okay. I think that I'm seeing a thumbs up from Wendy. I'm a thumbs up on that. That's the staff proposal. Do we have city clerk?
I see 3 currently, but the deputy mayor has a question.
What, Amelia, can you remind us, was that 250, was that based, what was that decision based on back in July?
Regionally comparable rates.
And is that still true?
Yes.
Is it still true that 250 would it be regional comparable?
Yeah, for hourly parking.
Okay.
I will, Council, I will add, there was an article in the Seattle Times a month or so ago about Bellevue's work. They are considering changing their on-street parking. It's free in Bellevue now. They are considering something around $4 to $6 an hour. I can send that article if you want. We spoke with the Bellevue Transportation Department, happens to be a former coworker of mine who's leading that effort. So it'll be something to observe, but that regional comparative rate is potentially changing in a year or so in Bellevue. But we're comfortable with 250.
Maybe we'll have a competitive advantage here then if it's a little lower.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Thumbs up from Dave?
Thumbs up.
All right, so you got your 4? All right. Amelia, any closing remarks before we shut this down and move on?
Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, next steps, we will be likely back with first reading of a parking ordinance on April 1st. I do not anticipate we'll turn around the second reading by April 15th if there are changes. If there are no changes, we can probably make that turn. So we're coming up on 2 touches. Hopefully you have this work wrapped up in the April-May timeframe.
Very good. We look forward to seeing that back. All right. Thank you. Our next item of regular business is AB 6635, the 2025 legislative session update. And we welcome management analyst Robbie Cunningham Adams.
One second, get into the right screen here. All right. Again, for record, Senior Management Analyst Robbie Cunningham Adams. We'll be discussing the legislative session update. Council, we are in what's called a long session. That means it's a 120-day session. It began in January and it'll go to the end of April. In a long session, in addition to passing legislation and policy changes, the state adopts their 2-year budget. So I'm going to go through kind of what we've been experiencing so far. Certainly housing and public safety is funding is a focus of this session, and the challenges of addressing the significant state budget deficit. As a reminder, Council, you adopted late last year the city legislative priorities. Those focused on our capital funding ask for the emergency replacement of the city's sole water source, support for public safety, increased resources for behavioral health and substance use disorder, support for affordable housing, preservation and maintenance funding for critical state infrastructure, and preserving and protecting the environment. The 2025 session has continuing the recent trend of the last few years of a really significant and intense volume of bills introduced and considered, especially on public safety, housing, and land use. You'll probably hear me say the same thing again next year too. We have been really significantly involved in dedicating a lot of time and resources on engaging with the legislative process and for legislators. And as of this meeting, I did count, Mayor Neese and the city, we've given testimony either live in committee or submitted and read on 27 different times in committee. So it's been a significant amount of effort and we've been really involved. Council, for you and the community who might not be aware, we actually have a new representative in the 41st District. For a while, we had Representative Tana Sen, who's from the island. She was nominated and confirmed by Governor Ferguson and the Senate to be the new secretary for the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. So whenever there's a vacancy, there's someone who is at least temporarily assigned to be the representative, and they have to run in a special election this fall. So that person was Bellevue City Council member Janice Zahn, I think soon to be former Bellevue City Council member. We've met virtually with Representative Zahn soon after appointment to discuss issues affecting Mercer Island and our priorities. I know the deputy mayor has been really involved in cultivating our relationship with her this session. So she's been very communicative. She's reached out to us a lot. We've had some kind of frank dialogue that we appreciate. And so that has been going well so far. Next slide. Okay, the state budget. The state is projected to have somewhere in the range of $12 to $15 billion of a deficit. The operations and transportation department budget is especially strained. I'm going to focus on two ways this affects the city. The city, we signed on in support of Association of Washington Cities letter opposing a sweep or a kind of cut in funds of the Public Works Assistance account. And if you talk to Jason, that is a resource we use a lot as the city. It's really essential for cities across the state to fund critical basic city infrastructure. And at $100 million proposed cut being diverted to the general fund deficit, that would really erode our ability to fund basic local infrastructure. And it goes back on agreements we've made with city leaders. So that's one of our key objectives, is protecting that funding in the budget discussions in the session. This also affects our sole funding ask for the session. We requested $3 million to support the construction costs for the emergency replacement of the city's sole water source. We've submitted an application to the state capital budget with the assistance of Representative Zahn's office. As I said, the state budget is under considerable strain. That being said, we've been told by our lobbyists and by Representative Zahn that the capital budget, the state is in a little better shape than the operations or the transportation budget. So I think it's fair to say the budget's still strained. We're in no way guaranteed that funding, but we're going to fight to the end to get really any amount of funding for that pipeline. We won't really know the final outcome of that to the end of April, which is usually the last thing the legislature does, is adopt the budget, assuming the governor signs it. So in your agenda bill, there's quite a number of bills that we've been tracking. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, and there's even more bills that we've been keeping an eye on as well. There's a lot to track. So I'm going to highlight kind of the ones that we staff have found the most important. First, on public safety, we've been really closely monitoring a variety of police funding bills. There's a 1.6 or 7, and we're kind of down to one single bill that is the main vehicle for the legislator on it. That's House Bill 2015. This bill does a few things. It expands local government and counties' ability to councilmanically levy a sales tax to fund public safety. This could be both for police officer, retention, recruitment, and alternative public safety responders. This bill is paired with a grant program. You may have heard a big campaign item in the governor's race was the $100 million for police recruitment. I think this bill would fund something similar to that. I think it would give priority to cities or counties that implement a local funding option. You'd kind of get those funds matched by some of these grants from the state. We have not taken a position on this bill, but certainly public safety and more resources for public safety is something we're really interested in. And so now that we've kind of narrowed down the one bill, we're going to really hone in on seeing how we can shape this bill to provide the most amount of tools in our tool belt as a city. Another, probably the most important bill we opposed this session, House Bill 1380. This would have limited city regulations on the management of homeless encampments on public property. Thankfully, this bill did not make it past the March 12th floor cutoff. We were strongly opposed. We were really involved in the process, along with the vast majority of cities around the state. So thankfully, we were able to help prevent that being adopted. Another kind of key bill we were really involved with in opposition, unfortunately, was Senate Bill 5066. It would have really expanded the authority of the Attorney General's office to investigate local police departments. This is something us and the Association of Washington Cities believe they already have the authority to do, and it really would have significantly increased liability on the city and really restricted local control and management of our wonderful police officers. So it did not make it past the key deadline. It is dead for this session. Shifting the housing and land use, once again, this is one of the more significant themes of this year's session. We were tracking a lot of bills related to transit-oriented development, parking regulations, lot splitting, mobile dwelling units, development regulations, GMA compliance, step housing, permanent supportive housing, siting. We tried to pick which one of those bills we kind of were opposed to the most, and two of those was the mobile dwelling units and the step housing siting bill. So we were really involved with our delegation on why those would be problematic for us. Thankfully, those did not make it past the floor cutoff. We're going to continue to engage with the remaining housing bills. I think the reality from staff strategy is that nothing's guaranteed at Olympia, but we would anticipate the remaining housing bills would probably pass in some form. But we have the ability through our representatives in committee to, shape how those are formed, reduce impacts or negative impacts, or even improve the bills. And so that's kind of where we're going to spend our time on those bills. Last, another one of our key priorities was behavioral health and substance use disorder. Maybe unfortunately not as much action on this session as we would have liked on it. That being said, we were looking for any bills that would help our YFS team. As a reminder, we have behavioral health services here on the island. So we did testify in support of two bills. Senate Bill 5071 would have amended the reckless endangerment of a controlled substance to include fentanyl. It did not include fentanyl. And expand the crime of sexual exploitation of a minor to be inclusive of digitally created or altered images. That's some legalese to kind of refer to artificial intelligence, and it's something I know YFS has mentioned as an increasing issue on school campuses of altered images, and giving law enforcement more ability to intervene on those situations. So it's March 18th. We've got several more cutoffs that the legislature's got to go through. So not all these bills that are still alive will make it. But we're going to need to come back to you on the final impact of this session and any implementation requirements. I'll just add, I think there's a non-zero chance that the special session will be required to deal with the budget deficit or potential impacts from federal decisions. And so when the time comes, staff will provide a final recap of the session and its impacts on the work plan. And that's all I have. Happy to take questions.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Let me just start by saying a huge thank you to you and the rest of the staff and the lobbyists that help with these types of long sessions. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint like a short session. And so these are two very different beasts to deal with. And I think we've done a good job this year kind of pacing ourselves and finding a cadence that works and drives an outcome that we're proud of. And I think at halfway mark, we should be pretty proud of where we are. And that's a strong testament to the work that you guys have done and the city manager has supported. It's really been great to see. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, these sessions involve a lot of late nights, weekends, that kind of thing. And I think the team, you'd think there were 10 more people on the team working on this, but I think it's been great to sort of see the whole, Robbie, your leadership, and then, everyone has been working on this, and, everyone has sort of chipped in to provide information on a really quick turnaround that's been very accurate. It's been great to see. I think that it's a real value when we can provide some, data and some real analysis behind the questions that we get from Olympia. And also thanks to the mayor. He's, was it 10 testimonies? Did I get that wrong?
We did. I think the city did one of them ourselves, but I think there's 25 or 26 that Sleen either was on Zoom testifying on committee or we submitted. We've been a lot more submitting in writing this year, which has been a more efficient use for our time.
It might have been 10 in 1 week that I'm thinking of, but
Yeah.
I think the mayor's really gone out of his way and waited in very long virtual queues for testimony. So I appreciate that. I think just sharing our perspective, I think, has given legislators a lot to think about and sort of offer a different perspective than what they might hear from other cities, and sort of understand how different policies imposed at the state level can sort of work in different communities.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Weinberg.
So I have also been meeting with representatives on a few occasions. In our most recent discussion, which was 2 days ago, she gave me an update on the $3 million request for the waterline project. The Capital Budget Committee was trending towards just a no on that, but when she was able to talk to the chair of the committee and explain the situation, and I explained to her that our main pipe is going through a ravine that is moving a centimeter a year, and we really need to move this. There's 26,000 people that depend upon that. Then she was able to get him to agree to pencil in $500,000 for their current draft of the budget. But as you said, everything's still on the table until end of April. But we got it off of zero for now. So hopefully it'll stay there or maybe even go a little higher.
Yeah, that's really fantastic to hear, Councilmember Weinberg.
Okay. Not seeing anything else, we're going to move on. Appreciate that update. More to come. Our next item of regular business is AB 6641.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we need to make a quick staff swap. Can we take a quick 5-minute recess? Well, you can get the staff, because the staff are in person. And they are
Oh,
gonna
got you.
come sit here.
Reconfiguration. Okay. So we will be in recess beginning now for 5 minutes, returning at 6:30 PM. Okay, thanks for joining us. It's 6:30 PM. The council is returning from a 5-minute recess to reconfigure the room. And our first item of regular business after the recess is AB 6641, the scope of work for Deane's Children's Park site plan. And we welcome Chief of Operations, Jason Kidner.
Good evening, Council. Jason Kidner, Chief of Operations. With me this evening is Shelby Peralt, our Capital Parks Manager, as well as Sarah Blivis, our CIP Project Manager. And online, I believe we have Andy Mitten from the Burger Partnership. And again, we're here to talk about the Deane's Children's Park scope of work and public engagement plan. Just for context, brief overview, we have 10 or 12 slides tonight to talk about. We'll give a high-level overview on the background of the project, talk about some of the existing conditions, talk about that community engagement plan, and then our anticipated project timeline for completion. So just a reminder for council, there is a motion in front of you tonight to approve the scope of work for the engagement plan and the scope of work. Help us identify any gaps, confirm the city's approach to addressing this plan, and then providing additional input as we move forward. So just for a refresher, we've talked about the Deane's Children's Park project on a handful of occasions, but never formally like this. A few years ago, the city completed a bike skills area in the area, and as we were going through that exercise, we realized that there were some other amenities that also were nearing the end of useful life that were further confirmed in the PROS plan. The PROS plan completed an assessment that evaluated those site amenities and prioritized playgrounds in particular, Deane's and other parks for replacement. Just to remind the council, we have talked about possibly doing a master plan in this park. What we're proposing here tonight is a refined scope of work, a more narrowed approach to focus on those specific site amenities, existing site amenities, rather than a 20-year vision for the park. Deane's Park is located within Island Crest Park and is also known as the Dragon Park and dedicated in 1985 in honor of Lola and Phil Deane. Just a couple years ago, the city passed a parks levy to prioritize the replacement of those playground projects. And Deane's Park was identified as one of the first 5 to be replaced. As you'll see here in the pictures, there are a handful of playground structures in the park. And I can personally tell you that I started with the city in 2005, and the castle was one of the first projects I worked on when it was installed. So that gives you some context. It's 20 plus years old. So it's definitely due for replacement. So what we're proposing for our scope of work is the site plan, which will integrate the bike skills area with those other site amenities to meet universal play standards. As we've talked about on a handful of occasions, Deane's Park is prime for improving universal access for all because of its flat topography and different site amenities. We are looking to engage the community in a number of different ways to help with the playground equipment selection and help identify a final site plan once we've gone through some alternative analysis. I will say we have, as I referenced earlier, there was a parks levy that funded this project. However, the levy does not have enough funds to fully fund all of the site amenities. So what we are focusing on is we're focused on the playgrounds, but also looking at other amenities like the picnic shelter. And if a handful of you were out at the bike skills area in the fall when it was pouring down rain and you quickly realized that picnic shelter roof was leaking, there's an existing restroom facility that's dilapidated and actually closed near this area. We will look at those site amenities, but the focus of the levy funding will be used for playgrounds. But obviously, we'll be looking for additional funding and grant opportunities for future replacement of other site amenities. So for context, we have a couple slides on the site location. So here you see an overview of the park. Again, Deane's Children's Park is located within Island Crest. As you can see, Deane's is the red outline above. The bike skills area is the yellow area. And then with Island Crest Park, they share the parking lots between Island Crest and Deane's. Those often are used for not only people going to Deane's and Island Crest, but also if people are going to Island Crest, they tend to be overrun with ball field use. So that's something that we are looking at as well. Next slide. Diving a little deeper, again, there's some pictures, some pretty pictures on the right that sort of help illustrate the specific areas we're focusing on. So the upper picture includes the main entry and the ADA spots to Deane's Children's Park. You have the entrance road in the middle picture. Again, the parking area is right off the entrance road. And then you have 2 new bicycles entrance areas. On the left, you see the site plan where you have the different entrance points. On the right-hand side, in the middle of the graphic, you see we have a future shared use path coming down Island Crest Way that will be in design in the future years, and that will be a component of this evaluation and configuration, is how to integrate that shared use path as a possible new access point to Deane's Children's Park. Next slide. There it is. So what is our, actually, I think we have to go back one slide. There you go. Perfect. That's all right. So this slide is very busy. I was waiting for the slide. I'll focus your attention on the dark blue shaded areas on this map. So this is the Deane's Children's Park area. You have the trails, the trails throughout the park, but the blue shaded areas include the playground structures. And as you can see, there's a handful of play structures, from the digger tool, from the climbing rock to the castle to the other play amenities, as well as the picnic shelter and the existing dragon. So we will be focusing our attention on those areas other than obviously the dragon. The dragon was replaced 2013. Perfect. Thank you. Next slide. So how do we get there? Here's our roadmap for success. We're looking to input the community's priorities to help influence the overall decision. We will be using levy improvement funds to help with the playground replacements, but again, we're starting to look at other site amenities and other improvements that will be needed, looking at alternative funding sources for those additional funding mechanisms or site amenity improvements. We're looking to invite the community to participate in this process and provide those meaningful opportunities both through in-person and virtual meetings. Next slide. So dive in a little deeper. We have our Let's Talk page up. We will have, we plan on having up to two open houses that include both in-person as well as virtual meetings, a couple of surveys. We will be engaging with the PRC, the Parks and Recreation Committee, along the way to get feedback on those concepts and alternatives and helping provide that final recommendation that will come to the council for approval. So we have lots of different tools within the toolkit that we will be using for this plan and this scope of work. So here's our anticipated time frame. We are the blue box number 2. So we're in pre-design and pre-engagement. As you heard from the public testimony this evening, we have begun to meet with some of the friends of Deane's Park and continue to solicit input. We will be moving to finish this plan by the end of this year. And that will lead us into a site plan that we can, again, start to apply for grant opportunities, but also feed into that immediate construction for the playground structures in the following year. So this evening, the question for council is, do you approve the scope of work? Do you approve the engagement plan? Do you have additional input, feedback, or insight for us to include in our scope of work and engagement plan? With that, we're here for questions.
Okay, I appreciate that. And we'll open up to questions. Councilmember Weiberg.
Yeah, so I applaud the staff's progress in enhancing this park and converting Mercer Island's parks to include universal play equipment is crucial to making recreation inclusive and accessible to everyone. I also noticed that, well, if it aligns with the project timeline, I'd recommend that we consider having some of our community outreach and engagement events that take place in person in the park itself, ideally during the summer peak hours when there's lots of people there. So you can not only talk about it, but you can point at it and say, this is what is going to be in scope, this is what's not and why. And it really helps manage expectations.
Okay, Councilmember Anderall.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for this presentation. I think this is a wonderful project. So Jason, is the approach that you're taking on this kind of consistent with the public outreach and input and approach for planning that you took with the Mercerdale Park?
Correct, yes.
Okay, well then, I mean, that was a great successful outcome. I think the community really appreciates it. So if the approach here is consistent with that, I think this is well on track.
I agree. All right, with that, is there a motion to approve the scope of, that's all right, Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Yeah, a question. So when you talk about the bathroom that's dilapidated, is that the one that's closest to the non-shelter shelter, the leaky shelter, or is that the one closer to the park, the parking lot?
That's a great question. There's actually two restrooms. The one that's closed is the one that's closest to the picnic shelter. And it is, you could call it a green roof. Not
It
by
is
design.
green.
It is very green. It's currently used as a storage facility. But there are existing utilities there, and so it provides an opportunity to improve. And there is a secondary playground structure, but it's multi-use, and it's actually close to the parking lot and other way. So it's a further walk. It's not necessarily right next to the playground area and the existing recreational amenities.
Yeah, and there's a path that ends at a chain link fence to get to that too. I think one thing, the sight lines there, I think is really important. So I'll give you that feedback now. But I do think this is the right approach, and I'm excited. Also, I think to what Councilmember Weinberg was just saying about having inclusive playground equipment, I think it was a process that was eye-opening to me when we talked about Mercerdale. But I think it's become a point of pride that we have that facility at Mercerdale that's inclusive, and I'm excited to see that at Deane's Children's Park as well.
Councilmember Andrew, Old Hand?
Old hand, sorry.
Okay. All right. Council, is there a motion to approve the scope of work and community engagement plan for Deane's Children's Park site plan and direct the city manager to commence the planning work?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Weinberg, seconded by Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum. Any discussion? Not seeing any. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Weinberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Andral,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum,
Aye.
Mayor Neese,
Aye.
and Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion is approved. Our last item of regular business is AB 6642, scope of work for Clarke and Groveland Beach Parks Joint Infrastructure Plan, and we'll welcome again Chief of Operations Jason Kidner.
Thank you. Give us just 1 second. Perfect. So we're going to dive into the Clarke and Groveland Beach Infrastructure Plan, slightly different name. Again, we had originally planned for a master planning process, a joint master planning process for these parks. However, given the state of the infrastructure, the near-term need, we're refining our focus, refining our scope of work to prioritize the infrastructure, the overwater structures and the shoreline facilities at these two parks. So we'll blaze through these slides for you real quick this evening as well. Feel free to ask questions along the way. They're a little bit more detailed than the last presentation, just because we have a little bit more information at our fingertips. So with that, let's see. Okay, so both these parks and facilities were designed and developed in the 60s and 70s. They both, as I mentioned, they feature aging infrastructure. As you can see there on the left, this is a picture of Clarke Beach. As I just referenced, we had a joint planning effort that was approved in 2022, but we're back with you this evening to refine that scope. And again, we have the Berger Partnership helping us with this project along the way. So what is, the question came up prior to the council meeting, what is the joint infrastructure plan? So the plan will prioritize that repair and replacement of existing infrastructure, specifically focusing on those overwater structures and the shorelines for the capital reinvestment. There is a reason that we are partnering these projects together, as we have found with existing capital projects, namely Luther Burbank Park, the waterfront project at Luther. They take years to design and permit and actually get to the construction phase. I say years because it is truly years, and they are very, very expensive along the way. So both in terms of design, permitting, and funding, those are all questions that we need to address, and we want to prioritize that infrastructure first and foremost rather than 20-year reinvestment strategies for the parks. So again, just here's a slide on what the difference between a master plan and the infrastructure plan is. Again, we're identifying specific areas rather than focusing on the overall vision. That is a picture of the swimming area at Clarke Beach. That is a sheet pile wall. That is not mocked up. That's exactly what it looks like. So we are facing many challenges renovating our waterfronts, including balancing those recreational amenities, the different beach uses, navigating the strict environment, the permitting environment as a reference, and we have a slide on that to talk about that, and then obviously planning for the reinvestment along that waterfront. So again, we have a community engagement strategy and different opportunities. It consists of the online surveys, an open house, some meeting with the PRC to again get feedback on that final recommendations. We have a Let's Talk page set up, and then have other opportunities with different neighbors and community groups to meet along the way. I will say, I'll just make the point that, again, we have the burger team and others have done some of that site work and the engagement work prior to this meeting. They did some of that last summer as part of the peak season, but there will be additional steps along the way and different engagement opportunities as well. So just reference, we're going to talk about Clarke Beach first. So there's a site map here. Again, Clarke Beach is on the south end of the island. Again, if you're familiar with the PROS plan identifies that the south end of the island is lagging in terms of recreational amenities and opportunities for the community. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the topographic survey that's been completed by Berger and team of the site. I will say, as we get into Clarke, Clarke is provides a little bit different opportunities for recreational amenities in the future, just because of the topography and the size and availability of park space to perhaps provide more accessible opportunities in the future rather than Groveland. Here you see pictures of the existing infrastructure. Again, this is something that's been a long time in the making. You can see the sinkhole on the bulkhead, and you see the cracks on the concrete stairs. You've got aging wood. We've got shorelines that aren't what they consider fish-friendly or environmentally friendly. And then just given the relationship to the Cedar River, Clarke Beach provides a unique opportunity in terms of habitat and shoreline restoration, more so than Groveland does. What's not pictured here is that sheet pile wall, that artificial wall that was built for the children's swim area. That was artificially made years ago. That is obviously, the picture spoke for itself. It doesn't have any wood on top, and it's definitely aging and deteriorating quickly. So shifting over to Groveland, Groveland's on the west side. Again, you have the topographic survey here on the right-hand side. Obviously, Groveland is, in terms of the two parks, Groveland is, what we've heard from the community is preferred for swimming, sunbathing. It gets better afternoon sun. Clarke tends to lose the sunshine in the afternoon. But that said, it's an important recreational opportunity for us as well. And again, some of the improvements, again, you see the cracked bulkhead, the failing railing connection. We have some degradation of the timbers, additional just failing infrastructure. Again, I will say Groveland did have a repair that was done a few years ago that extended the useful life. But again, both of these parks have aging infrastructure that more so, or I would argue that Clarke is definitely further along because it didn't have that repair done earlier, but both facilities are nearing the end of useful life, and if we lose that infrastructure, there may be a challenge in getting it back. So we're trying to prioritize the replacement and reinvestment to make sure that we have those opportunities in front of us. Other existing conditions, we've talked about this a handful of times too, and again, this isn't the focus of our site plan, but things that we are considering. The restrooms are obviously non-compliant. Access to these restrooms to the shoreline continues to be a conversation in the long term of how to address. We have, not only are the restrooms non-compliant, there's missing elements within these restroom facilities that create challenges that are something that will be assessed and included for additional consideration as part of this plan. As I said, we've done a little bit more work with the Berger team prior to this. We've actually have some geotechnical work that's been done in terms of evaluating the shoreline structures. If you go down to the structures and look at the bulkheads, you'll see these pictures. You'll see cracks in the bulkheads. You'll see the concrete starting to separate and settling issues that take place. As you walk down the pathways to these facilities, you have cracked paths, potholes, things that show the age and deterioration of the sites. And so, as with any new permitting requirements, a geotechnical evaluation is required, and so that work has been done and is helping feed the reinvestment strategies for these facilities. So I referenced earlier the permitting challenges, and I can't shortchange this enough. This is what you see in front of you here is what the permitting requirements will be for both parks. Again, we're working with both parks in tandem because there's an opportunity to perhaps get some mitigation credits by using Clarke in conjunction with Groveland, because Clarke does have perhaps a better environmental appetite or opportunity, I should say, for improvements where we can perhaps offset it with some different recreational opportunities at Groveland. I won't go through the list of the permitting requirements that are on the screen, but they are quite extensive and take a number of years to get through. So just as I said, we've done some public outreach. Here's a quick summary of some of the feedback we've heard to date. Most people are getting to the parks by car. The beach access remains the highest priority for people visiting both parks. That's an important feature of our community. Swimming is obviously rated the second highest for use at Groveland. People go to Groveland to swim. And then picnicking is obviously highly rated at both parks as well. The biggest concerns that we've heard in our outreach to date is the accessibility, the degraded amenities, the pet and bird droppings, planting litter. We do know that we have a number of off-leash dogs that tend to frequent Clarke Beach in particular. And then obviously the site amenities are degrading, and swimming opportunities and safety are obviously a high concern for the community as well. So again, here's our project schedule. We are here in Q1. We are in pre-design and pre-engagement. We will go through our draft plan development and hopefully have the plan back for review, the site plan back, infrastructure plan back for the council review in early 2026. And that's it. So with that,
Okay.
we are here to take more questions. Thanks.
We'll go to questions. Councilmember Reynolds.
Yes, I think I'm hearing you say that if we were to build this park today, these in-water bulkheads and stairs, we couldn't build them, is that correct?
So, I missed that. I'm sorry. Repeat that one question.
I think I hear what you're saying is that if we were to build this park today, environmental regulations would not allow us to put those stairs and bulkheads and other things in the water because it's not environmentally friendly, correct?
Correct. They are hardened bulkheads that are not they do not meet the environmental permitting requirements. It would be very, very challenging to permit those today, correct?
So if we wanted to do the right thing and replace those with something that would be approvable today, I mean, the right thing meaning environmentally friendly, I recognize what we're doing is legal. Are there designs or things we could do with that beach that would be environmentally friendly, compatible with today's regulations, and would still allow recreational use?
Jane Reynolds.
Yes, absolutely. That is something that is being considered and discussed, in particular with Clarke. I think there's a good opportunity to remove those bulkheads, that bulkhead, and improve those water structures by still providing recreational opportunities to still get to the water that meets the recreational goal of the park. That is something that's being actively discussed and talked about, and how to improve that. So yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, I just, I'll be on the record as encouraging you to consider those options. The lake is important to all of us, so I want to do what we can to preserve the wildlife and everything else.
Councilmember Reynolds, I'll just mention that I think you've probably gleaned the complexity, particularly of a Clarke, both the regulatory and permitting environment, removing that really strange steel swim enclosure. There's a lot of sediment backed up against it. You know, we can't just pull it out. So we're going to have to work with a variety of very skilled engineers to help us work through the regulatory path. But we want to do it all at once, right? Because we want to get the credit for taking out all the hardened amenities on the shoreline so that we can replace it with something else that's more modern and environmentally friendly. But it's certainly going to be complicated. So your point is well taken and supported by staff.
Okay, thanks for thinking about it.
All right, Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Jason, can you, when those repairs were in like Groveland a few years ago, I think there was a wave and tenure that was placed in there, and what was the rationale at the time to not do a bigger replacement? Was it cost or was it?
I can actually, so yes, the ultimate driver was cost, cost and time. I can speak to this because when I was the park superintendent, I actually started the original assessment of this project, and so yeah, it was cost was a driver, and I'm not gonna lie, this is going to be a costly endeavor, right? And that's part of this exercise that we have to do. We have to go through the design and permitting phase, and then we have to identify how we're going to pay for this. We've been very successful in funding the improvements at Luther Burbank Park through grant opportunities, and we will certainly look to capitalize and use every opportunity to go after grant funding for these projects as well. But yeah, overwater structures are very, very expensive to complete.
Yeah, it sounds like we should wish best of luck to everyone dealing with these permits. But no, but I think it's the right approach here to do a bigger replacement rather than trying to patch it up, because we try to patch it up, we'll be back here again in a few years anyway. So appreciate it. I think this is the right approach.
Councilmember Weinberg.
So Groveland and Clarke beaches are, I've lived here in Mercer Island my entire life, or well, since I was a little kid. So, been to these parks many times over the years, including lifeguarding for several summers as a teenager. These are the sparkling jewels of the south end of the islands. They have very old structures on them that, yes, we should replace, but I think that as long as it will take to replace these, it's going to serve as a proud legacy for anyone who's involved in this project. So I'm fully supportive of this plan.
Okay, council, is there a motion to approve the scope of work and community engagement plan for the Clarke and Groveland Beach Parks Joint Infrastructure Plan and direct the city manager to commence the planning work?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Weinberg, seconded by Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum. Any discussion? City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
Councilmember Andral.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Mayor Neese.
Aye.
And Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion is approved. We now move to other business in the planning schedule, and we welcome City Manager Jesse Bond.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have any updates for you this evening.
Excellent. Council may have a motion to excuse Councilmember Jacobson from his absence this evening.
So moved.
So moved.
All right, moved by Councilmember Weinberg, seconded by Councilmember Anderl. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Councilmember Andral.
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
And Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion passes. Any other absences coming up? Anybody? Nope. Councilmember reports. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum, anything to report?
Yeah, Councilmember Weinberg and I had a good opportunity with the chamber last week, an event that was sponsored by the Port of Seattle. So we got some good ideas out of there and got some good feedback and things we can work on. Later that day, there was a PIC meeting, one of the more, honestly, I would say contentious PIC meetings that we've had. The topic of conversation was the King County staff came to speak to us about the levy that they're proposing to put on the ballot for the August election, which would be $1.5 billion. This was something I think was started a while ago, and they're going to kind of go back and rethink some of the aspects of it, just because there was a lot of pushback from cities, just concern about taxes and a few other things, and how the money was going to be spent in terms of money returned to cities. I think from our perspective, there wouldn't be enough coming back to Mercer Island, just in terms of there'd be an increase in grants, which cost money to apply for, as opposed to direct return to cities. And then also some of the concern that we raised, and I want to thank the staff for sort of really quick turnaround on this, was, there wasn't a lot of thought that went into how sort of the regionalization factor of parks, meaning every city was sort of looked at either from population or from a piece of the pie in terms of assessed value. And there wasn't a lot that went into it in terms of who was using the parks. In our case, obviously, Luther Burbank here, and even this facility, is used by folks from around the region. There was a lot of money that went to different projects in Seattle, I think recognizing that there is a regionalization factor to a lot of these projects. But I'm hopeful that that feedback we all received, and they'll kind of take that into account as they move forward with the levy.
I got every last word out of this guy. I have nothing to report. Councilmember Weicker is not here. Councilmember Weinberg.
Yeah, so also went to the Chamber of Commerce coffee on the 12th, and a couple details from that. I think there was some good suggestions about revisiting how impact fees are allocated so that when a business moves from one side of town center to another, that we consider whether the new business that comes into the old space might take the impact fee rather than the one that's moving. Especially if there was some relocation involved in that, or it was due to redevelopment. We also might want to explore, or there's an idea raised at least about exploring vacancy fees to keep retail spaces actively occupied on the island. And there's a lively discussion about the town center parking and getting some good feedback for tonight's discussion. I also was at the East Side Transportation Partnership meeting on Friday, where we passed the operating procedures unanimously. There are concerns expressed about the loss of federal infrastructure funding, and also concerns are expressed about the Washington State budget deficit and how that's how to get that to a balance, especially with 26% of Washington's budget being federal dollars, and the road usage charge bill was discussed, and it might come back as a NTIB, or necessary to implement budget bill in the legislature. So other things might also come back in terms of the 1% lift or the wealth tax. A bill of interest that came to my attention there that might pertain to the city is Bill 5746, which creates a committee to address electric vehicle infrastructure property crime. We might want to monitor that as we are building our EV infrastructure plan. A couple other things about possibly losing the federal government taking away the ability to have tax exemption on municipal bonds. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Several last mile options were discussed. One other thing I wanted to mention, of course, is my next monthly open brunch. It's going to be April 19th, a Saturday, at Valhalla Sandwiches at 10 a.m. And as always, all are welcome. It's an open agenda. Anything you guys would like to talk about, all I ask is that everybody show your respect to the chef by ordering some food and or beverage, and let me know if you're coming so I can reserve a large enough table. Thanks.
All right, Councilmember Reynolds.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, Ted briefly mentioned that he had met with Representative Zahn on the weekend. I was there with him. It appears she's planning on having periodic open brunches similar to what Councilmember Weinberg has been doing, and this was the first one. It was at L'Experience on Saturday, I believe. Maybe it was Sunday. I can't recall now. I'd encourage people to keep an eye out for those. There were a whopping 3 people that attended that with her, and it was a great opportunity for one-on-one discussions. We talked about a number of the city priorities and a number of my personal priorities as well. It was a very effective meeting. There's going to be a broader meeting with all of our reps and our state senator at Bellevue College this Saturday at 1 o'clock. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it, but I hope to. I would encourage members of the community who have any thoughts on how the city's or how the state is doing to try to come to that meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderall.
Thank you, nothing to report.
All right. The next regular scheduled hybrid city council meeting will be Tuesday, April 1. No, that's not a joke. Beginning at 5 p.m. The time is now 7:04 p.m. As a reminder to council, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the broadcast. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight.